at the moment seemed void of. "We're trying to help usher the village of Chagrin Falls into the 21st century," he continued. He wiggled his fingers at Veronica, and she jumped to action. She pushed her glasses up her nose with a flick of her finger, then grabbed the handle of the portfolio with one hand, wrapped her other hand around the tripod, and marched to the front, not wasting one moment in setting it up. The Village Business District people were gathered for a meeting of the Shop Owners of Chagrin Falls Association. We called it SUCFA for short. Well, it's what the members called it. I wasn't one, yet, although with my new food truck under construction and sliding off the assembly line soon, all shiny and spanking new, and the ice cream shop doing good business, I'd need to join. But today, I'd come to support Maisie, one of my best friends. The room was sparsely filled. Old sewing machines, a long wooden table for cutting, and a file cabinet, drawers hanging open, overstuffed with patterns and sewing materials scattered about. Ms. Devereaux had long abandoned the practice of dressmaking, designing, and tailoring clothes. All the wares she sold in her boutique nowadays came ready-made. There hadn't been an agenda circulated at the start of the shop owners' meeting, and after Maisie's plea for acceptance into the shop owners' fraternity, everything had seemed to be winding down. That was until Zeke Reynolds took the podium. "Who is he, Win?" Maisie leaned into me and pointed her finger. I hunched my shoulders. "He said his name is—" "I know what he said his name is," she said, not letting me finish. "But who is he?" I shrugged. I was just as clueless as she was. As clueless, it seemed, as everyone else. I mean, I knew what he'd said. I'd heard what he'd read from his note cards, and so had Maisie. I think what everyone really wanted to know was why. Why was he here telling us what he was going to do to our little village? To us? How did he think he could? I glanced back at the doorway where he'd entered 20 minutes earlier, escorted by Kevin Greer, the mayor of our little village, and Amelia Hargrove, owner of the around-the-corner bookshop. Amelia had kept her eyes straight ahead, carried a small stack of colored papers. Expressionless, she sat at the front of the room. Hands in lap, she seemed placid and unperturbed by the speaker's words. The mayor, however, seemed to have quietly slipped back out. He was nowhere to be seen. Mayor Greer, whom I hadn't voted for in the last election because I was still in New York, was a good friend of my grandfather's. I'd have to be sure to ask Pop what the mayor had been up to bringing in a man who would cause so much confusion at a SUCFA meeting. Had the two of them thought the crowd would be rowdy when they agreed to escort Zeke Reynolds in? I wouldn't want to be in their shoes when this was over. I directed my attention to the others present and spied the reaction on their faces. Some of the faces I recognized, some I didn't know. All, though, except for Amelia, were upset. "We've acquired all the necessary buildings but one, and there is still a plot or two of land we're working to gain ownership of." Zeke was back to talking. He'd built up a steady cadence, decidedly schlepping forward with his presentation. "It's amazing how they were sliced up into such small parcels." He drew in a breath and shook his head. "I'd hoped to come here tonight to get your support." Veronica had pulled a poster board drawing out of her portfolio as he spoke and placed it on the easel. "Our support?" Maisie turned and looked at me, the red curls of her hair thrown to the side with the jerk of her head. "For which buildings?" She tightly clutched the back of the metal folding chair in front of her, the knuckles on her hand turning white. "Which of the buildings around Triangle Park? My building?" I started to speak, but her curls, flipping the other way, gave notice she was no longer paying attention to me. She scooted forward in her chair, sitting on the edge of her seat, and eyed Zeke and his drawing board, intent on finding out what they meant. "It's not really your building." Rhea, sitting on Maisie's other side, leaned toward her and said matter-of-factly, "At least not yet." She gestured with a head nod toward the front of the room. Or maybe ever.